Hello there, and welcome to another Agoners battle report. Yeah, we're back with another Essence of War battle here. We were using the basic rules this time, and this game did take place a couple of weeks ago. I don't have a huge amount of photos for it, but I'm going to try my best to try and explain what went on anyway, because it was a bit of a special one, as I'll explain in a little minute. So yeah, a couple of things for this one. First of all, it's against a brand new player of the Ninth Age called Marius Cloud, who's just joined on the Ninth Age forum, and I saw a thread from him, and we had a chat, and we got in touch, and he lived fairly near to me, and I was like, how about we get together for a game? And we were looking for a local club venue we could potentially play at. We was going to play at my house later as well, but we actually ended up getting, well, he got busy with work, and then it was the weekend of all the snow and things like that up north, so just as well we didn't try and do that, but it's just as well we did try and do this because in the week preceding our original plan, we did manage to meet up at it's called the Sheffield and Rotherham Wargames Club, and they meet every Thursday night in Sheffield, pretty near the station. If anyone's come from out of town, it's pretty easy to get to, and they only ask for a few quid kind of contribution towards their venue and things like that, and they've got loads of terrain, scenery, like tabletops. There's a bar there. You can get drinks, snacks. It was pretty nice, to be honest, and all the people there are pretty cool. We met a few people that were kind of interested in maybe playing a game sometime. There was a couple of guys into 3D printing, so we are talking about that, and they were kind of encouraged by the idea of getting back into sort of 28 mil fantasy. There's a lot of different games they play there at that club. It's a lot of historical gaming, but they also do some fantasy gaming, and they're quite happy to host anything. I know there's some guys there hoping to start some Blood Bowl stuff. Obviously, I'm very up for Ninth Age. If anyone wants to ever play a game with me at that club, I've also played at the past, as you'd watched my other videos. I've also played at the Patriot Games Club in Sheffield, and that's on a Monday night. So we've got some options here. There's even another club I've not been to, and we've also discovered there's quite a few other clubs around the place. There's some in Chesterfield and some in Barnsley that I'm hoping to get to someday. So if you're watching this video and you are familiar with any of those locations and you'd like a game of Ninth Age, let me know and get in touch. I am Remy77077 on the forum, or you can comment here anywhere you see Agoners online. You will find me very easily online. So yeah, so there, as I say, this was a new player, and but he wasn't completely new to wargaming. He'd played a lot. He'd played some Warhammer Fantasy back in the day, and we've been chatting, and he was like, okay, he's quite happy to kind of jump in. He'd read the rules and he kind of got the grasp of it. He wanted to jump into a game like right from the outset. So we didn't have any kind of stopping for tutorials. We just got some pints to drink and got straight on into it. So yeah, he chose to play the essence of the essence Empire. I mean, it's almost the same acronym, right? Essence of War, Empire of Sonstall. Chose to play the Empire of Sonstall, which you can see on screen here. He does have his own models, which are very, very nice indeed. I've seen some photos of them. Not seen them in real life yet, but hopefully I will do soon. But as he hadn't managed to bring his models, 'cause he was travelling. Obviously, I just live quite nearby, so I was easily able to transport my guys along. So we're playing with my miniatures, which you can see here on the screen. Hopefully you see me waggling around. Some of these are old GW ones from way back. Even an old Advanced Hero Quest guy, if you didn't recognise this guy. But these are actually very new Last Sword Imperial Guard models, which I'm really impressed with. Some of these are resin, some of these are metal. The characters that sort of the champion and the sort of command guys would be metal miniatures, but the rest are all resin. And yeah, they're all kind of fit together with, you can do the arms, how, glue them in how you want them, and like even though there doesn't appear to be a lot of poses, as you can probably see from this squad here, you can do a lot with these guys. So really cool models. I recommend you. If you aren't familiar with the Empire Sun Style Patrol, which I'm sure you will be from previous videos, but yeah, they've got a wizard. They've got a handgun, 10 handgunners, very good shooting combined really between the wizard and the handgunners, right? So the wizard's got one kind of spell that can be useful in certain circumstances, Corruption of Tin, which reduces the enemy's armor for a turn. But more importantly, he's got this Silver Spike, which does go quite a decent distance and can be really scary against certain targets. It's very good against single models with a lot of hit points, so big like characters and larger infantry type units can be quite good against high armor targets as well because it does hit with AP10. So although it might not do it, it's pretty guaranteed. It doesn't do too much damage, but it's fairly guaranteed with what it does do. You've also got, so that's your kind of shooting kind of firepower really, and then you've also got 5 electoral cavalry who aren't that great. They aren't elite guys. These are just basic dudes on horseback, and they don't have lances, unlike my models. Bear in mind, they have kind of essentially got great weapons, as you'll see. Their agility is 0 there. They do strike last, so they don't really care about getting the charge. Their main job, to be honest, is to be tanks because the armor 5 makes them pretty hard for a lot of things to deal with them. And then speaking of tanks, though, the Imperial Guard unit, a really strong unit actually, with defense. Oh, sorry, yeah, offensive skill 4, strength 4, AP 1. Not incredible output on damage wise, but defense 5 and armor 4. Even though they've only got res 3, they're pretty tanky and hard to get rid of, basically. And there's 15 of them, so there's a decent bunch there, right? So that's the Emperor Sunstar Patrol, which I say Marius just chose to play with. I chose to go with Warriors of the Dark Gods because these are also my miniatures, and I'd never actually played with them yet. So after spending a long time painting and converting and modelling all these guys, never actually used them myself in an actual tabletop game scenario. Had fun, painting them and taking the photos and things. But you thought, as he said, I said, are you bothered? I'll pick like whatever. And sometimes when I'm playing a new player, if they've got a preference of the matchup they want to play, or maybe there's an army they understand better how to play against or something. I'm happy to play any of the miniatures I can do, or even also sometimes I volunteer to just I'll deploy first because I do think it's harder. But this game we played it straight because Marius was happy, so I was like, well, I'm going to play the one I've never played before, which is Warriors of the Dark Gods. These guys are a lot of these are really old miniatures as well. These are actually converted Blood Bowl miniatures and some ancient like late 80s. This is when I first got into my wargaming actually. Some of these are actually from the time back then, the late 80s, sort of I think the original Realm of Chaos miniatures, and even before the Realm of Chaos books came out. Actually, these guys, and some are converted Blood Bowl ones as well. I got the parts actually. I did buy these newly for the patrol because I really liked the Game Zone Warrior Knights models actually, but unfortunately they were quite expensive and they didn't come. They were just be the unit I needed. Whereas these guys, because they came on the spruce with lots of weapons and things, I don't have any other warrior type miniatures ever. Other than say they'll scramble in to try and convert models, try and make the patrol. Um, so yeah, but these gave me like by buying this kind of box of knights, it gave me loads of spare parts to essentially put on these guys. So you can see a lot of these conversions have come from the plastic parts. These models are a little bit precarious, I will tell you. We had a couple of miniature casualties during this game. A little bit of damage was done to my models, but it can't be helped. It's just one of those things, right? However, again, this is a brand new model as well. This is a Raging Heroes sorcerer model. I really love her. These are beautiful, beautiful models. Sorry, them. Um, but yes, an excellent model. Really impressed with that one. And you can see on my more fancy terrain that I don't really get to use for Essence of War games because it doesn't really suit the size of the table in some of these photos. And then if you want to see the stats, as I say, the sorcerer, a rather dangerous block of warriors here. They've equivalent of halberd warriors, which you'll see from my conversions. I've tried to give most of them halberds to make them look authentic, but also put the shields on them because even though they kind of don't have the shields in Essence of War rules, they do if you're playing fantasy battles. So I'm already, planning to maybe enlarge all these patrols one day into full Ninth Age fantasy battles armies if I ever get that far. I won't get that far with all of them for sure. I'll never have the time, but you never know. One day, always planning. Plan ahead, people. That's half the fun of these miniatures, right? Getting all your ideas in your head and getting your imagination going. So yeah, and they've got a small unit of Fallen who are kind of dangerous, kind of fast, but can be real. They've got some really bad matchups. So a lot of attacks, but only strength 4 AP 1. Although I say only, that's still pretty good, right? But there's only 4 of them. That's really their downside. So yeah, kind of vulnerable to a lot of things. And then 3 warrior knights, which I was saying earlier. They also kind of have great weapons, by the way. So they also hit with agility 0. So again, no knights that need the charge. Again, 2 spells, just like the Empire have. They have a Pentagram of Pain, though, which is a missile spell. Missile spell, yeah, I said that correctly. Doesn't do too much damage, but does have AP 1, so it's not bad against certain targets. And the Rot Within, which reduces your opponent's unit's offensive skill and defensive skill in combat. So that can potentially be very useful because all of your warriors' combat blocks here all have pretty good offensive skill, right? In fact, even the sorcerer, right? 3 attacks, offensive skill 5, only strength 3, but the sorcerer is like a better fighter than your average, and yeah, basically warriors, not many guys, but all pretty rock hard fighters, basically. So there we go. Now I will have to take you through this with a lot of talking because, as I say, I didn't want to slow the game down, especially with a new player. And although Marius was completely, very very nice and happy me to mess about and take a few photos, I didn't really want to do too many. But the game ended up so fascinating, and I really wanted to give a shout out to the Sheffield and Rotherham Wargames Club, and I also really wanted to give a shout out to Marius, and I also really wanted to explain this game as best I could even though I don't have many photographs because it was very very interesting. So yeah, I deployed first. I did roll. We rolled off, and I had to deploy first. I chose to deploy on this side. I had a bit of a ponder about this one actually because I could see good reasons, right? So one of the things with this matchup, both the wizards have a dangerous missile spell that's dangerous to the opposing wizard. Neither of them really wants to get shot by the opposition firepower. And in fact, my sorcerer is also kind of a little bit scared of these handgunners potentially as well, right? So it was kind of like, okay, the cover's going to matter, but the woods won't necessarily help you against the spells. So the two pieces of cover that really matter is this impassable terrain here and the hill, of course. So originally, I was thinking of hiding, similarly to how you'll see Marius has actually deployed, hiding my character behind the impassable. But then I figured actually, yeah, but I want to move out and do some spells. I want to do some stuff with my sorcerer. And if I lose them because of that, then okay, I'd rather do something than just stand around not doing anything. So and the advantage, of course, with the actually, well, both these patrols in a way, neither of them cares about the general's radius. So in the case of the Warriors of the Dark Gods, it's because the sorcerer is the same discipline as everyone else. In the case of the Empire Sunstyle, the wizard is actually worse disciplined than half of their units anyway, as they already have discipline A and discipline A on the cavalry and the Imperial Guard. So yeah, neither of these patrols has to worry about the bubble, as they call it, the kind of general's radius on the discipline. So I kind of went, well, extra reason to not worry about if I do lose my sorcerer, right? So be it. As long as they've had some effectiveness on the game, I'd rather they do something and die. But and also then I realised actually it was better for me to take the side with the hill purely to stop the Empire player having the hill because I didn't want a firing squad of handgunners and Silver Spike from an elevated position like that where I basically would have no way to avoid it. So I figured if I take the hill, what I can do, I can put my sorcerer on the hill as I have, giving me the firing position for my shooting spell anyway. If not real shooting, of course. Nothing else has ranged power in the Warriors of the Dark Gods army. They literally don't have a shooting phase, so makes life a bit simple, a little bit quicker. But the nice thing was, right. So I say they're out of 6 inches from everyone on purpose, right? So if my sorcerer does die, then they won't cause any panic test to anyone else. And also they can run off this hill potentially. So my plan was I knew obviously I'm going to have the first turn because I've deployed first. I can see how Marius chose to counter deploy against me. And then if he does come forward and try and have a missile firepower where we basically have Silver Spike versus Pentagram of Pain, the interesting thing is, although the Silver Spike is more guaranteed damage, if Silver Spike cannot one shot me, right? It can only do 2 hit points, and I've got 3. So no matter how well that roll goes, I can always survive on 1 hit point and potentially use duck behind one of my units if they've run in front of me. I can even duck down behind the hill if I decide to get chicken with my sorcerer, depending on how the first 2 turns went. That would give me those options. So again, this is why I chose this hill. So surprising, Essence of War can seem simple, right? Not a lot of terrain, not a lot of units, but when you actually think it all through, there's quite a lot of impact you can have, quite a lot of things to think about that can really make a big difference in the game, or not. It depends on how it goes. But yeah, in this case, I was like, this is my thought process. I've also done this. This is something I've never been able to do. Never played a patrol like this that really didn't care about the bubble, as I say, with the general. So, or very rarely have. So I think I'm going to wide deploy here again, just wanting to avoid panic tests on any unit. So I don't want any unit near any other unit, ideally. And given this terrain, again, my plan was okay. Well, these fallen can either jump forward. I didn't necessarily, well, obviously, I didn't know how Marius had deployed at this point, so I'll pretend I don't while I'm talking about this. Pretty simple, basically. My speedy units out on the flanks because they can then swing around and get into the center, no problem, right? these units being small frontage does make them a little bit easier to wheel as well. Whereas the warriors, my slow, rock hard fighting guys, these are amazing. Okay, I really want to get them into a fight around the objective, right? I don't want to stick them out anywhere silly. They just need to push forward. They're one of the slowest units in the game, right? This is the disadvantage of them. Similar to the Imperial Guard, pretty slow infantry blocks, only March 8. Okay, so unless you get a long charge, they don't move very quickly. So yeah, very important to deploy them fairly centrally, I believe, as you'll have watched from my other battle reports. So I did just that, and it was kind of like the other thing that I considered was, well, I'm really scared. This is a classic kind of like shooting versus rushing kind of matchup, right? Everything in my army basically wants to get into combat immediately, apart from my sorcerer. But even the sorcerer's got a nice spell to help me in combat with the rot within if I can get that on off on an enemy unit in a melee fight, right? So everything's telling me everything about warriors wants to get into melee. Whereas although the Empire do have some melee units, of course, not completely ineffective at any stage of the game. They're more of a kind of jack of all trades, but they do have some of the best shooting in Essence of War patrols levels. So they're definitely the shooter here, and they probably want to stand off and get as much firepower in as possible. So again, I couldn't really avoid it though, right? So there's only 4 turns. I've got to get to the objective. There's not enough terrain. If we'd rolled up a map with a bit more terrain on, maybe I could have come up with another scheme, right? But given how little terrain there was, I mean, I could have tried to hide in these woods, but I didn't see how it would particularly help me because then he put his. I didn't think he'd put his handgunners there behind this wood anyway because he'd waste his first turn shooting. I figured he'd have them out somewhere in the middle, and he did indeed, as we can see here. Um, so I figured, and again, Silver Spike was essentially unavoidable unless I want to hide behind the hill for the entire game and just lose, right? So, like, well, I can't. I'm not going to hide. So basically, it was the idea of target saturation. Um, and you'll see this in turn one. I decided, well, I could try and hide my sorcerer, I could try and hide my knights, I could try and hide I mean, everything's vulnerable. Nothing wants to get hit by Silver Spike, to be honest. Even the warriors. Okay, he'll only kill one, but it'll almost certainly kill one. And there's only 8 of them, and that I really need as many of them as I can because every casualty hurts that unit because it's so small. Um, so yeah, Silver Spike was like the big thing. The handgunners didn't help, but I was like, well, kind of like if you're facing a cannon and you have like 3 monsters or something, I went for the idea of target saturation. I'm not going to try and hide anything. I'm just going to go, well, everything's coming at you, right, fast. So you can pick one target and do some damage, but that's going to be a lot, right? So that's how I deployed. Marius counter deployed like this. So he went for the Imperial Guard here behind the wood. Not sure I would have done that, as we'll come up to later on. But I guess, is it obviously his first game. We've got these beautiful cards, by the way, for the Magic cards made by my friend Bart, who you'll have seen in previous bat reps. Shout out to Bart, who did come along for the night. He was watching our game a bit and also chatting and watching some other games and having a drink. He is now a little bit involved with this games club. Actually, is helping run it. So Bart's getting heavily into his wargaming these days. A multi-game player. But also up for some more Ninth Age, of course, with me, hopefully in future. But yeah, so there we go. But yeah, the good deployment here. I'd kind of like, again, I like the handgunners out in the open, like threatening to shoot anything that comes into the middle, and I've got to come into the middle because it's Essence of War, basic level. The only objective is get to that center objective, as you can see marked here. Um, and again, I like the displacement of the wizard here, hiding from me first turn. There's probably no way. I think we kind of worked out. Okay, even 8 inches that way, 8 inches that way. There was no way to see because even though I'm on the hill, I can't see over impassable terrain. That's the way the rules work. Essentially, all impassable terrain is infinite height. Well, all hills are infinite height, and all impassable terrain is infinite height plus 1, or something like that. So you can't see over impassable no matter what it actually is. So even though you kind of, well, I can maybe see over that like smaller building, it's like, well, it doesn't matter. It could be a taller building. So no way to do that. So yeah, I like this deployment of the wizard. There was a little. We had to make sure he's got get an inch apart and an inch away from the terrain, which is say a little bit awkward in that situation. And then the classic cavalry out wide. I'm guessing trying to counter my fallen. I don't know. I might take that fight. I ideally want the charge, although these guys don't have a lance to say. But that's maybe. I mean, it's a tough one really for the Empire Sun style. I do feel like none of their units kind of straight up winning melee. They really need to kind of dawdle. Um, I'd have been maybe tempted to do some kind of like push forward and flee kind of tactics, but it's difficult to say what I would have done here. But anyway, pretty good deployment. I like it. Let's see how the battle plays out. as much as I can do. As I say, limited photos here, guys, but I have got a nice down the line shot of my guys here because I was like, yeah, I'm happy with my painting. I did go to town a bit on some of these miniatures actually because with such a small patrol, I don't normally do this many highlights and things like that, but I decided I'd go to town a little bit more than I have on any of my other miniatures actually with these guys. So everyone's got full edge highlighting and all that kind of thing that I don't normally do because when you're painting like hundreds and hundreds of orcs and goblins and even the Empire Patrol, right, is pretty. I mean, I've got quite a bunch of those guys. They're pretty big blocks of guys. It's not quite as thrilling to go that crazy with your highlighting. But on the Warriors Patrol, I have gone to town a little bit. I could still do more. There's always a lot more. I never kind of go full bore apart from on character models like the Sorcerer I have gone on. But then also I kind of try and keep my painting standards so that like even my if my character I don't want my characters to look so much better than the rest of the army that it makes the rest of the army look a bit trashy, you know. So there's a downline shot. Enough about painting here. We're talking here for a battle report, not a painting report. But there we go, and we'll see down the line shot of the Empire Sonnenstahl there looking in the distance. So there we go. And turn one for the Warriors looked like this. So I eschewed all of that plan to maybe duck behind the hill. As I said, I was really interested. I wanted my sorcerer to do something. So I was like, okay, if they die, they die. But they're going to move forward and do some stuff, right? So full push forward with the Warriors. Full push forward as far as they can go with the Kniggets. And you can probably see my plan here. I'm hoping to get around the back of this building and roll up this flank potentially with my knights. The risky business here doing this though is I've only got 4 turns, right? So it all depends because I could only get to here and there's no line of sight, unfortunately, to make a charge on turn 2, even if I want to. And obviously it does give Marius the option to push forward, but then I've got the option to swing around to that. So kind of unfortunate thing of this positioning was quite good actually. So I don't know if Marius had planned that to kind of stop me trying to get around this side with my knights, or at least slow me down. Surprisingly, it might seem like a small thing again, but that one piece of impassable terrain actually causing a lot of tactical thinking here because it does mean like there's no possibility for a turn 2 charge right here, but it does mean I can hide from the handgunners as well. So you're not sure who comes out best of that one, but yeah, it's a long term gambit with my knights, but they aren't that great in the front, right? Even though they've got 2 attacks each, they might win. They're probably the best fight they would against knights versus knights, but sadly, or rather smartly in Marius's way, he's actually deployed his knights far away from mine, so that I'm probably never going to get the fight that I want with them there. So instead, even if they go straight into the front of the handguns, it's a bit dicey because of their rank. They'll be steadfast anyway, and plus I didn't really want to get shot up on the way in if I could help it. Obviously, none of my units really want to get shot up, but my knights, with only 3 of them, they're probably the most vulnerable to kind of like, if they lose one model, they can panic immediately, and so on and so forth. So that was my push forward, that was my thinking. Again, I couldn't quite get out of the line of sight of the handgunners with my sorcerer, but I did stop some of them seeing me, and I think there's some cover shots, I can't remember exactly, but I think there's only about 4 of them could get me from that angle. So I kind of went for that one to try and not. I couldn't completely stop them shooting me, but I could hinder them a bit. Um, so that was my turn one. I don't. I'm going to flick around the photos a lot here. I'm going to be a lot of back and forth. I warn you now. Yeah, that's all I really have for photos until quite a little while into the game. So I'm going to have to describe how this went from now on. In turn one for the Empire, pushed forward all the way up with the Imperial Guard, right to kind of the edge of the wood, which I thought was interesting. I mean, I did remind Marius rather of the hindering terrain rules because there's a couple of interesting things in those rules. So there was cover, obviously, but that didn't matter because I haven't got any shooting. And I did point out it wouldn't give any cover from Pentagram of Pain. Oh, my magic on turn one, by the way, I can't remember exactly what happened, but I think I attempted to cast Pentagram of Pain at the handgunners, which is partly why I moved forward. I remember I don't think I did any damage at all, which was disaster number one. Disaster number two was I also miscast, so I did manage to cast it without any problems. But yeah, it did also miscast, and then rolled the damage, and then rolled no hits. So I was kind of lucky in the end. So I miscast it, but didn't do. Basically, ended up being a wash. It ended up being a non-magic phase. Completely nothing happened in the end. No, nothing. The miscast did nothing, and neither did my spell. So that was my turn one magic. Incredibly ineffective for the warriors. But yes, so turn one for the Emperor Sunstyle. And so I have to this is all going to be a bit radio commentary here, a bit of description. The knights didn't really move forward. They didn't want to push forward. I think I'd given them a long charge here, maybe a 9 or a 10, because I didn't really want to fight that immediately. And I was happy for this being a standoff, right? That was kind of like, well, if we keep each other out of the game, I think I'll win that one. Because the Fallen, again, that if they could run in and get the handgunners, great. But they're not particularly effective against the Imperial Guard in the front. I'd kind of happily sacrifice them in to set something and then finish him off, but it's very hard to do to like in only 4 turns. It's very hard to make that kind of play on purpose. So again, I'd pushed him up not quite as far as I could go, so I didn't want to give an easy charge for the cavalry in turn one. Marius didn't take the charge anyway, and I don't think he barely moved them, maybe a tiny little bit of cornering, but did push forward the Imperial Guard right into the wood. The handgunners, I believe, stood firm and tried to shoot at my warriors, but got a terrible roll. And maybe I can't remember. I think he did hit two, and I had 6 up armors. And if I remember correctly, I double sixed my armor save on 2 dice. So yeah, that was quite a turn up already. So I was like, well, this dice is going swingy and crazy already, and we were already kind of laughing quite a bit at our dice rolling already. But yeah, spoilers, guys, it's going to get more ridiculous as the battle wears on. So but yeah, and then his wizard moved forward as well. Did a silver spike across the board. He had an option again, target saturation. He could have gone for the sorcerer, had to think about it. Could have gone for the warrior knights, had to think about it. But then decided, not sure why. Probably the warrior knights would have been a better target, right? I would have got personally. I would have gone for them with the silver spike, but decided did not like the look of the jib on the fallen. Took a long range shot all the way across the board against the fallen with the silver spike, and killed one, as you would expect. And then I immediately failed my panic test and immediately ran off the board. Didn't need too much to run off the board, given how close I was to the board edge. So that might have been a bit of a mistake from me. My wide deployment seemed very clever at the time to try and avoid one unit panicking another, but what I hadn't considered was it also put my units next to the board edge, meaning should I fail a Discipline 8 panic check, and that's all I've got in Discipline 8 across the board with these guys. So yeah, a horrible rolling for me. I mean, I usually kind of risk it saying I've got to pass Discipline 8s most of the time. It's at least 2/3 chance you pass them, so I take that gamble. In Essence of War, sometimes you've got to take these gambles, right? You don't have a lot of units, you don't have like magic armor, and you don't have battle standards and things like that. So it's you've got to take some risks. It's all part of the fun. So yeah, that was pretty bad going. So I was already on the back foot really at this point. I was like, well, this is swingy. I've managed to like take a round of shooting from the handgunners and take absolutely no damage at all. That's remarkably lucky, right? But then yeah, falling off the board on turn one, not a good look for me. Pretty unhappy at that. Um, but yeah, so my turn two, Warriors turn two, I decided, well, all I've got left really is my Warriors unit. I think it was about a 9 charge, maybe an 8. It was an 8 or a 9 charge into the Imperial Guard, and I don't normally take those kind of long charges, right? Because I'm just don't fancy my odds really. Basically, I was like, well, it's low odds, but I looked at the situation and went, right, okay, what else am I going to do? The handguns are still quite a long way off. They're not going to get a flank charge on me, even if I miss my charge and go forward and show my flank to them. And really, do the handgunners really want to try and take the warriors in the flank? Like, I mean, they probably don't want that fight anyway, even though the flank charge is good, but like. Yeah, I mean, personally, I wouldn't. They'd be more likely to try and shoot me some more, right? Because it would be tactically more sensible. So I wasn't too worried. Basically, it was a perfect situation where failing the charge really didn't hurt me at all because I'd still end up near the objective, and then all the alternative was to just move closer and give them an easier chance to charge me. So it was really a case of like, well, if I fail the charge, right, they then countercharge me. I end up in the fight. Whatever happens, right? Um, but then I was like, I don't really want. I was aware that if I charge them in the woods, I'll be out of the objective, right? But at the same time, if they're in the woods, we're talking about hindering terrain. Hindering terrain means you can't be steadfast. So I was like, well, they're one thing the Imperial Guard have over my warrior block, right? Is they've got 3 ranks. So unless I kill a heck of a lot of them, they will be steadfast against me and take a discipline 8 check, so they're very likely to stick around for a while and gradually whittle down my warriors, okay? So to try and prevent that, I thought, well, if I go in, if I get this long charge off, they're going to take a proper discipline check, proper break check with no steadfast, so it could be down to a very low discipline score. If I win it and they run off, I can then, I could either potentially reform, I can backtrack, I can basically try and get back onto the objective. I've got enough time to do it because it's only turn 2, right? So that was my thinking. So I went for the long bomb charge, pulled it off. I think I rolled a 10, and I was like, woohoo! It's one of my first ever long bomb charges. Got into a massive scrap. Did take them down. Did beat them. Got them down. I think I got them to down discipline 7 or 6. No, discipline 6 for sure. It was. And that was the big roll for the game. As I almost thought I could almost win the game on this discipline 6. This would be a massive turnaround from losing my fallen to sending the Imperial Guard running on turn 2. Nope, he rolled his discipline 6 and they stuck. So these guys ended up having a massive fight in the wood for a little bit of time. And my next phase, but my next magic phase, right, was absolutely incredible as well. I got off Pentagram of Pain and the Rot Within, so I put the Rot Within on the Imperial Guard because it was really helpful for that fight. Obviously, didn't help them break, but it did help them with hitting. I also got off Pentagram and Pain and one-shotted the Empire Wizard. Oh my goodness! So again, another huge swingy roll. One-shotting him was not fun. So he lost his sorcerer. Sorry, lost his wizard. That then had a panic check on the handgunners, but they passed it. So Marius managed to pass discipline 7 and a discipline 6 on this turn. Could have been a disaster, but no. All his units is standing around, but no more wizards. So no more silver spikes. So that was at least good news for me, especially my knights, which was now I then moved them right around here, threatening to come in to the flank of the handgunners. So eventually would get to turn then. So the next round of combat, the Empire Electoral Cavalry smashed into the flank of my warriors. He would have to take a bit of dangerous terrain, but no one died, so that was good. But this combat would again continue, and even with the flank fight, even with the flank rolling, incredibly, I can't remember if it was. I think it was a draw. Yeah, I don't think either side took a break test. So my warriors were whittling down. I think I'd lost like 3 of them by this point, but I'd killed an awful lot of Imperial Guard. I killed another knight, or I killed a knight or two, and these Electoral Cavalry did absolutely nothing to them. They did obviously give a charge. They give +3 to the combat, 1 for the charge, 2 for coming in the flank. But yeah, didn't even get a break test on me. Despite the ranks, and the Imperial Guard were chipping away, it was just like, yeah, Marius was getting very, very upset with his Electoral Cavalry and how rubbish they were. I mean, he'd kind of predicted it. I think there was only 3 of them fighting because of the positioning of the units, so he couldn't quite get them all in on the flank. But yeah, it was just like they just couldn't roll it. I may have even made some more 6 armor saves. I can't remember, but it was absolutely hilarious the swings that were happening. We were just laughing our heads off about this. He also had a choice, right? So my wizard had moved up a little bit further here to take that shot, the pentagram pain shot. And it was an interesting decision here because what Marius could do, he could either advance. So my warrior knights were over here, but if he marched full forward, right, he'd get out of their line of sight again because they wouldn't be able to get around the building and see them. I believe there was a way he could hide them, and I think he probably should have done that. But if he did that, he'd take no shots this turn. Instead, he went for a cheeky normal move to get some shots on. So my sorcerer was kind of trying to hide behind the impassable terrain. But if he moved forward just 4 inches, he could get all of them shooting my sorcerer, or at least most of them. But of course, you then move and blah blah blah. So some of them may have been cover shots. I can't remember, but anyway, there was a definite threat to do some serious damage to my sorcerer there. But once again, the handgunner's got a really bad roll, and he only did 1 hit point of damage to the sorcerer. So yeah, ended up being a very unfortunate decision there because that meant my warrior knights could then charge these handgunners the next turn, start of my turn 3, and I did indeed charge my warrior knights into the flank of the handgunners. And because my sorcerer was like, well, what else are you going to do? You may as well get stuck in, right? So they're quite good at fighting. So I sent my sorcerer also into the front of the handgunners. So at this point, we kind of moved to the middle of my turn 3, which I do actually have a photograph of. So you can see the actual carnage that has been commenced here. These 2 guys are still locked in combat. There's only 4 warriors left. There's only about, can't exactly see how many Imperial Guard left there. I think there's only about 6 of them left. We were tearing off models off that unit. I wasn't pleased. My poor guys. Notice my little dwarves in the side there. Look at them good there. Still four of those guys left. Still in the flank bonus, right? But if you look at this position, there's another. I got off another rot within because that was the only spell I could cast once my sorcerer was in combat. So yeah, constantly rotting these guys. Um, and then we have this epic combat. So I decided to roll this combat first. Actually, in retrospect, it was foolish to send the sorcerer in the front because rather than only having two of these guys fighting, that put another six of them all fighting, all fighting against my sorcerer. And while they've got pretty good stats, the odds of because I already had the charge bonus, right? If you look at the odds of the sorcerer doing like essentially three attacks, strength three versus six attacks, strength three back at them, it's like, it was very dicey to even bother, to be honest. And maybe I shouldn't have bothered. But I don't know. I kind of it wasn't too foolish because I thought, well, the sorcerer's not doing much else right this game, so they may as well get stuck in this fight. So, but as you would expect, the warrior knights did smash up these poor handgunners. I think I wiped an entire rank off. I don't think they were steadfast. So yeah, I think because I had six attacks, I think I did some crazy rolling, and then maybe the sorcerer popped off one more. But yeah, anyway, they broke and fled. I chose to pursue this way towards this fight because you might see, unfortunately, Marius had aligned this perfectly. I don't think my knights were a long way off, so I think they needed a really high roll to get there, and I actually chose not to pursue with the. Oh no, did I? I think I chose to pursue both of them because I wanted to make sure the handgunners were gone, and they were indeed gone. I think the knights rolled a really low pursuit roll, only moved forward a little bit, but my sorcerer rolled a really high roll and ran straight into the flank of the Imperial Guard. So we were now equaling out each other's flank charges here, unless the two Imperial Guard left, and sorry, the handgunners did in fact do one more hit point to my sorcerer. So my sorcerer was down to one hit point left, but was into the next fight in the same melee phase. Because as you know, if you pursue into a combat that hasn't yet been fought, you can then fight again. So, but it basically came down to could the two Imperial Guard that could hit my sorcerer kill them off, whilst then to prevent me getting the +3 bonus in this fight, and they didn't. And so during all this stuff, again, like it whittled down, did kill a couple more warriors. I believe the Imperial Guard was still doing a bit of damage to them. The knights, the electoral cavalry, were doing absolutely nothing to them still. Marius was getting absolutely outraged with the terrible rolling. The electoral cavalry were letting him down turn after turn after turn, and it was getting quite funny. I'm not gonna lie, we were laughing so much. And then yeah, so my sorcerer got into this fight. The two of them swung at the sorcerers, trying to do one more hit point, couldn't do it. This whole fight meant with my extra flank bonus from the sorcerer, now I did win this fight again by I think 1 point only. And so Marius had to make two non-steadfast checks again, discipline 6 and a discipline 7, pass both of them again. What was going on here? Right, basically the only discipline check Marius had failed all game was the auto. Well, it was an auto break, I believe, on these guys. They lost so badly, so that he didn't. I don't think he failed one. Basically, it was just no one will run. Like these guys are like the bravest guys ever. Yeah, because he passed all his panic tests as well. It was ridiculous. Like literally, no one would run away, and I'm like, come on, guys. The funny thing is, of course, right? We're here now, and the start of turn 3. No one's on the objective still. We've completely ignored the whole point of Essence of War basic rules. And again, I was chortling away. Go, this is not really how it's meant to play out, guys. But yeah, this is how it's happening. So at the end of the game, I don't think I have another photo. Yeah, sadly I don't take another photo. But I'll tell you what happened. So my knights ended up. So turn 4, Oh, sorry. The Empire turn 3. All there was left to do was roll out this melee once again. I think yeah, no, this time he did finish off my sorcerer, so no more flank bonus for me, and a bit of damage from him. He did win the combat, and again I'd killed off more Imperial Guard. They were down to I think only 2 or 3 guys left at this point. More knights, more warriors dying. And then yeah, but I lost the combat by 1. Also passed my break test of discipline 7, so no one would fail, no one would run away. Turn 4, I had a choice. My knights could pile into this fight, and basically force a draw. I guess I don't know. the way I figured it is the best thing I could do was my knights could just move on to the objective. Excuse me. Yeah, so that my knights chose to move on to the objective. Maybe a bit of a boring play, and it meant as long as I didn't lose this combat and one of the pursuit rolls could have brought him onto the objective. Um, could have happened in my also if they broke in my turn. That would also be even bad news. But I was like, yeah, they should do this because they were about to wipe out. I was like, well, they should wipe out one of these units at this point. Um, yeah, I took the boring play essentially of moving my knights onto the objective and kind of not bothering with the fight. Figuring I reckon my warriors can either win or hold up, and that is exactly what happened. So we had three more rounds of combat, right? So we had the Empire from this point on. We had the Empire turn turn three combat. We had the Empire. Sorry, no more Rot Within, of course, at that point was gone, so that didn't help. So my warriors were now hitting on fours, so that dropped them down a little bit. And then we had the warriors turn four combat, and then the Empire turn four combat, and no one fled. We were left with I think two warriors left, one Imperial Guard left, two knights left, and that no one would flee. Just absolutely ridiculous break test rolling from both of us. We just roll in double ones all the way. It was just crazy. It's like we are so good at like rolling low. It was ridiculous, and I ended up winning the game with just my knights winning it 1-0. But what a hilarious game. I have never seen a game of Essence of War play out like that. And again, it just speaks to how much variety there is in the gameplay. Warriors versus Empire can be a very kind of one-sided result in a way because either the Empire shooting comes to play and like it did actually and sends a few panic tests early, and then the Warriors can't really like bring their full force to bear in melee, or you kind of goes the other way where the Warriors just get stuck in and just tear through stuff too quickly, and then the Empire can't really do a comeback. But this was just showed it. Sometimes it just the dice happens and there's the situations and the terrain. So much variety in this game. It's pretty remarkable. So yeah, thanks again to Marius for a great game. He's a great guy. Definitely, hopefully, we can meet up for another game sometime soon. Hope he enjoyed his first game of Essence. Well, I know he enjoyed his first game because he said so. So there we go. And we're trying to arrange. We might try and arrange if we can do a real life mini tournament for people around the sort of Sheffield area because we're building up quite a crew now. So we just need more people to paint up some patrols. So I can't quite provide patrols for everyone at this point. But yeah, I can bring a few to the party. So we'll see what people want to do. And then yeah, just yeah, just a great game, and then just shows how much fun it is. And another shout out to the Sheffield and Rotherham Wargame Society for hosting this fun one. So yeah, I will see you again next time. Might be doing some more bat reps. Might be doing a battle analysis video potentially for some of the tabletop simulator games that have been going on. If you've been following the Ninth Age recently, well, certainly the Essence of War side of the Ninth Age. So there we go. I shall leave with that one. Till next time. Bye.